Um, this reading actually talks about uh, the way or process we think based on the perspective of a cognitive scientist, Daniel Willingham. And it also talks about conditions of how people think and its implications to real life situation like classroom or specifically inside a classroom. One of the main arguments of the reading is quite surprising for those or for many of us because it's arguing that people are naturally curious but we are not thinkers. Unless the cognitive conditions are right, we will avoid thinking. Let me go first with this part of the statement that we are not thinkers. The reading is arguing that naturally speaking, we are always curious about things, but naturally speaking also, we try to avoid difficult things, or for most of the time, we find the easiest way out of things. We do not want, naturally speaking, we do not want to be in a difficult situation. And apparently, we always find the easiest way out or the easiest solution for things. And apparently, thinking is one of this difficult situation. And this is difficult. Thinking is difficult according to Daniel Willingham because thinking itself is slow, effortful, and unreliable. It is slow in a sense that before you come up with an output or a solution to a problem, it would take you time. It is effortful in the sense that it would take you cognitive effort, energy to really look into the problem and propose a solution. And it is unreliable because even if you think of an output or a solution, it does not guarantee that what you think would be sufficient to address the current situation or the current problem. It does not guarantee that what you think of is the real solution to a problem. Right? So it's slow, effortful, and unreliable. Take into instance the output that you're doing inside your classes. Whenever you make essay, you cannot say that it's that fast, right? It would really take you time to construct a really good essay. It is also kind of effortful because you exhaust energy, cognitive effort to do it, and at the same time, when you submit it or before you submit it, you're still thinking if what you did is correct, right? So this the reason why Daniel Willingham is arguing that we are trying to avoid thinking because it's slow, effortful, and unreliable. And he's arguing that for most of the time, we are not thinking. So if we are not thinking for most of the time, what are we doing? Right? If we are trying to avoid for most of the time thinking, what are we actually doing to accomplish tasks? Daniel Willingham is also arguing on the concept of automaticity. Automaticity, from the word automatic or automated, would refer to your routinary actions. Based on the reading, for most of the time, we rely on what we call memory. Memory would be composed of your content knowledge, the knowledge of who, what, when, and procedural knowledge, the knowledge of how. For example, the things that you do once you wake up in the morning in your bed, if you take a bath, you eat breakfast, all of these things are routinary in nature, meaning there's a procedural knowledge stacked on your memory that lets you do these things. In fact, in some situations that you're very familiar with, you also do a form of automaticity. For example, before the pandemic, when you are commuting on your way to school, right, you already know where to go, where to ride the transport. And this is a form of automaticity. Right? A classic example would be if you have ride a jeepney and you see passengers sleeping uh, all throughout the journey of the jeepney, but once he or she is already on his or her destination, he or she will suddenly wake up. And that's a form of automaticity. The routinary things that you do, the response that you do to familiar things are form of automaticity, which according to Daniel Willingham is not thinking, but just a memory. If I'll ask you 1 plus 1 right now, you would automatically respond 2. If I ask you 2 plus 2, you will automatically respond 4. So these things are stuck already in our memory and does not require any more thinking, at least in the context of Daniel Willingham. And these rely largely on your memory, both the content knowledge and the procedural knowledge. So if that would be the case, it raises the question of what is really thinking, or how do we really think? Daniel Willingham is proposing this process of how we think. We have first the long-term memory. That's what we call the baseline knowledge or schema, the one that we are referring to a while ago, which is a form of automaticity. This is where your automaticity rely on your factual knowledge and procedural knowledge of when, what, who, how. But for us to be classified as thinkers, or for us to be uh, describing what thinking is, it should not only be the long-term memory or the baseline knowledge or schema. There should also be what we call the environment. The environment would present new things to us, probably new context to us. For example, if you're in an unfamiliar situation that has new factors to consider in, this 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 environment is presenting you new information wherein you can draw out insights or understanding. Okay. So, and the environment which would contain very unfamiliar conditions would be a source of new insights for you. Now, how would the new insights from the environment work with what we have in our memory? Daniel Willingham is saying that for us to think, we should combine the new insight from the environment and the long-term memory that we have. If we will be combining the new insights from the environment and the long-term memory that we have, we are actually synthesizing, creating new information, new knowledge, and that's how we make a decision, and that's how we propose a solution to problems. And that for him is thinking, combining what we already know to the things that we do not know, to synthesize new information, to synthesize new understanding, with the hope of proposing new solution, with the hope of creating new knowledge or understanding. That for him, for Daniel Willingham, is thinking. Now, going back to the previous statement that unless the cognitive conditions are right, we will avoid thinking, it raises the question of when do we actually think? Well, based on the process outlined by Daniel Willingham, it's saying that there's a requirement for us to think. Number one is the presence of schema, the presence of a baseline knowledge. It would really explain why, for sometimes, we have difficulty in doing new tasks because we lack the schema of baseline knowledge to combine it with the new information. Let's say, for example, again, you're doing an essay. Sometimes you lack the words to write on your essay. This is because the presumption is for you to write, you need to read. That is, for you to write new things, you should know, or you should at least have baseline knowledge or schema of the things that you will write. The same goes for all other situations. For you to think on a difficult situation, you should have at least a baseline knowledge or a schema about that situation and combine it to the present or new information in the environment. Another thing that is a requirement for, or a condition for us to think, is that it should be something that is solvable. Daniel Willingham is arguing that we avoid thinking, number one, if the problem or the situation is too easy. There's no intellectual pleasure on it. I mean, 1 plus 1 equals 2. There's no real pleasure on solving it, right? But if the problem is challenging enough, but not on the extent that it's not solvable, then it would bring out intellectual pleasure to us. So therefore, the situation should not be too easy, but should not also be too difficult to the extent that it's not solvable anymore. That's the condition that would foster what we call thinking. Now, are there times that we should not think? Well, probably there is, or there are. Because if we will follow the line of argument of Daniel Willingham, thinking is slow, effortful, unreliable. Thinking 24/7, if we will follow the definition of Daniel Willingham, thinking 24/7 would really be very exhausting. I mean, when you wake up at bed, the first thing that you will do is to think. When you're taking a bath, the first thing that you will also do is to think. Each time you do tasks, you are thinking. If thinking is low, effortful, and unreliable, you would be exhausted all day out. I mean, after your online class, during your online class, you think of many things, and after online class, you still want to think. That could be very exhausting for us. So there are times that we should not think. And this is referring to the routinary things, the automaticity things, right? Like eating or taking a bath or all the things that you do on a routinary basis. But we should also be cautious because these routinary things are the things that we are taken advantage of. Sometimes because we are familiar with things and we respond to automaticity, some people take it as an opportunity to fool us because they know the routinary response that we're doing and we're not thinking at these times. So there are times that we should not think, but there are also times that we should deviate from the routinary things and we should think for us to avoid being fooled by other people. I hope this have clarified some concepts from the reading of Daniel Willingham. Please comment your insights about the ideas that this reading convey. Please comment it in the discussion section of our uh, canvas. Thank you for taking time to listen to this lecture. Good day.